Your sister would have been the better wife. Duke Adrian Viermont said it while signing trade documents. Not looking at his wife. Not even pausing. Just speaking casually. Like discussing weather. Which somehow made the words infinitely worse. Silence spread slowly through the breakfast room while rain tapped softly against tall manor windows. Rosalie Viermont remained completely still. Across the table, Lucien lowered his coffee cup with visible horror. Oh no. Quietly. Deeply. The voice of a man recognizing disaster immediately. Adrian looked up. What? Lucien stared. Actually stared. Because over years Adrian had developed a remarkable talent for accidentally destroying peaceful mornings. But this possessed ambition. What exactly, Lucien asked carefully, made you believe that sentence was survivable? Silence. Adrian frowned. What? Rosalie finally looked up. Not angry. Not crying. Almost worse. Calm. Dangerous calm. The better wife? Her voice remained soft. Very soft. Adrian leaned back tiredly. You know what I meant. No. Lucien said immediately. We absolutely do not. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The morning had become catastrophic before breakfast ended. The argument itself began stupidly. Like most dangerous arguments. Rosalie's younger sister Clara arrived at Viermont Hall 2 weeks earlier after their father fell ill. Clara Ashbourne possessed everything society adored instantly. Beautiful golden hair. Charming smile. Effortless confidence. People loved Clara immediately. Especially men. Unfortunately, Clara also possessed another talent. She admired Adrian openly. Not scandalously. Not obviously. Just enough. Lingering smiles. Long conversations. Constant praise. Rosalie noticed immediately. Because wives usually notice these things first. Adrian, meanwhile, noticed absolutely nothing. Naturally. Yesterday evening Clara spent nearly an hour beside Adrian discussing estate horses during dinner. Laughing constantly. Touching his sleeve occasionally. Rosalie watched quietly from the opposite end of the table. Not jealous. Not exactly. Just tired. Because lately Adrian barely looked at her during meals. Yet somehow found endless patience for Clara's stories about gardens and riding competitions. Interesting. No. Annoying. Very annoying. Rosalie finally mentioned it privately later that night. You encourage her. Adrian looked confused. What? Clara. Silence. What about her? Rosalie folded dresses carefully inside drawers. She flirts with you. Adrian blinked. Then laughed. Actually laughed. No. Rosalie looked at him slowly. She absolutely does. Another laugh. You're imagining things. Wonderful. Excellent. Every wife loved hearing that. Rosalie turned toward him. She follows you around every room. She's being friendly. She touches you constantly. Rosalie. No. Still calm. Always dangerous when calm. You genuinely don't notice? Adrian sighed tiredly. Because lately, every conversation somehow transformed into emotional analysis. Exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. Clara is easy company. There. The sentence. Wrong sentence. Very wrong sentence. Rosalie stared quietly. What does that mean? It means conversations with her aren't complicated. Silence. Unlike ours lately. Absolute silence. And suddenly Adrian watched hurt move quietly across his wife's face. Not dramatic hurt. Not loud hurt. The dangerous kind. The kind people hide immediately. Rosalie looked away first. Then nodded once. I see. And somehow that should have warned him. 3 years earlier Adrian met Rosalie during a library fundraiser in London. Not dramatically. Not romantically. Actually, she argued with him first. Adrian remembered standing near rare manuscripts listening politely while wealthy patrons pretended understanding literature. Then suddenly someone beside him whispered, "He hasn't read a single one." Adrian looked sideways immediately. Rosalie stood beside him holding champagne. Blue-green eyes narrowed toward a pompous lord giving speeches nearby. What? Rosalie pointed subtly. He keeps mispronouncing authors. Silence. Then unexpectedly Adrian laughed. Actually laughed. Rosalie smiled immediately. Warmly. Like sunlight appearing indoors. Then she asked, "You look miserable. Do rich events always feel like hostage situations?" And for reasons Adrian never understood, he spent the rest of the evening beside her. Back in the present, breakfast became increasingly uncomfortable. Lucien wisely considered escape. Unfortunately too late. Rosalie sat quietly stirring tea. Adrian returned to paperwork. Then finally Rosalie asked, "So if conversations with Clara are easier?" Silence. "Why exactly did you marry me?" Adrian looked up immediately. "What? A fair question." Another pause. "Was I simply nearby?" Lucien closed his eyes. Actually closed them. "Please stop speaking," he muttered toward Adrian. Nobody listened. Adrian leaned back impatiently. "Rosalie, this is becoming ridiculous." "No." Her voice remained soft. "No. I think it's becoming honest." Silence stretched heavily. Then Adrian made the mistake. The massive mistake. The catastrophic mistake. Your sister would have been the better wife. Nothing moved. Rain continued outside. Fire crackled softly nearby. But inside the room, everything stopped. Rosalie stared at him. Not blinking. Not breathing. Just staring. And suddenly Adrian realized too late. Too late. What he had actually said. Lucien stood immediately. "I'll be outside." Excellent decision. Wonderful survival instinct. Then he vanished before emotional death reached the room completely. Rosalie looked down slowly. Very slowly. At the wedding ring on her finger. Gold. Simple. Elegant. Adrian watched confusion appear inside his own chest. Because suddenly the sentence sounded different hearing it aloud. Cooler. Sharper. Wrong. Rosalie. She removed the ring. Just like that. No trembling hands. No tears. Just calm movement. Then she placed it carefully beside his untouched coffee. And smiled politely. Politely. God. That frightened him immediately. Go propose tonight. Silence. Absolute silence. Adrian stared. What? Rosalie stood. Smoothed invisible wrinkles from her dress. You seem to have solved your own problem. Another pause. Clara is downstairs. Her eyes met his quietly. You should not keep your better wife waiting. And then she walked away. No dramatic exit. No crying. No slammed doors. Nothing. Which somehow terrified Adrian more than rage ever could. 3 hours later Vermont Hall felt strange. Wrong. Servants moved carefully. Too carefully. Everyone sensed tension. No one discussed it openly. Naturally. Because aristocratic households survived entirely through pretending disasters weren't happening. Adrian sat in his study, staring at the wedding ring still resting beside cold coffee. Interesting. No. Not interesting. Unsettling. Deeply unsettling. Because Rosalie never removed it before. Not during arguments. Not during difficult months. Never. Then Lucien entered without knocking. Stopped. Saw the ring. Oh. Silence. Then. Oh, you've done something catastrophic. Adrian exhaled sharply. I didn't mean it. Lucien stared. You compared your wife to her younger sister. Silence. You told her the sister would be better. Another silence. Then she handed back her wedding ring. Lucien crossed his arms. What exactly do you think meant it looks like? Adrian rubbed his forehead tiredly. You know what I meant. No. Lucien sat opposite him. I genuinely don't. A pause. Explain it. Silence. Absolute silence. Because suddenly Adrian realized something deeply uncomfortable. He couldn't explain it properly. Not without sounding worse. I only meant Clara feels. He stopped. Lucien waited. Adrian exhaled again. Easier. There. Again. Wrong word. Lucien looked horrified. Adrian. What? Do you know why Clara feels easy? Silence. She doesn't matter to you. That landed hard. Because immediately Adrian understood. Clara required nothing real. No effort. No vulnerability. No history. No disappointment. Rosalie, meanwhile, knew him completely. Every flaw. Every silence. Every failure. And suddenly, for the first time that day, Adrian looked toward the ring beside his coffee and felt something cold settle heavily inside his chest. Because what if Rosalie finally became tired of carrying the difficult parts of loving him? That night Adrian did not sleep. Not properly. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rosalie removing her ring. Calmly. Quietly. As though she had already practiced the motion in her mind long before this morning. And somehow, that possibility disturbed him most. Because it suggested something terrible. Rosalie had not reached her limit suddenly. She had been approaching it silently. For a long time. The following morning Vermont Hall felt unnaturally quiet. No music from the west sitting room. No soft humming drifting through hallways. No Rosalie speaking with servants about flowers or breakfast menus or village schedules. The house still functioned. But warmth seemed missing. Like someone removed sunlight from the walls. Adrian entered the breakfast room automatically. Then stopped. Rosalie's chair sat empty. Interesting. No, not interesting. Wrong. Deeply wrong. Mrs. Fenwick appeared beside the doorway. Her Grace breakfasted earlier. Silence. Where is she now? Mrs. Fenwick hesitated. Dangerous hesitation. Then, packing. Everything inside Adrian went still. What? She requested travel trunks. No. No. Because Rosalie wasn't leaving. People threatened things during arguments. People needed space. People calmed down. That was how marriage worked, wasn't it? Adrian stood immediately. Where is she? Rosalie's room looked almost unchanged when Adrian entered. Almost. Which somehow made the packed trunks worse. Two stood near the fireplace. Another rested open beside the bed. Clothing folded carefully inside. Books stacked neatly nearby. Rosalie herself stood beside the window, fastening gloves calmly. Calmly. God. Adrian subtly hated calmness. You're leaving? Rosalie looked up. Yes. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, for how long? Rosalie considered the question thoughtfully. Interesting. No. There it was again. Not interesting. Measured. Rosalie looked measured. Careful. Like someone speaking to a person already standing far away. I don't know. Adrian stared. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Another glove fastened. Another movement completed. Everything deliberate. Everything controlled. Rosalie. No. Still soft. Still calm. You don't get to insult me yesterday and demand comfort today. That landed hard. Because she was right. Completely right. Adrian stepped closer. I told you I didn't mean it. Rosalie finally looked directly at him. And yet you said it. Silence. You compared me to my younger sister. Another pause. You told me she would have made a better wife. Her eyes didn't leave his. Do you know what part hurt most? Adrian said nothing. Because suddenly he feared the answer. It wasn't Clara. A pause. It was hearing how relieved you sounded. God. God. Because yes. That was exactly the problem. Not attraction. Not betrayal. Exhaustion. Adrian had spoken like a man tired of emotional weight. And Rosalie heard every unspoken thing beneath it. 3 years earlier, Rosalie nearly refused Adrian's proposal. Not because she didn't love him. Because she did. Deeply. Dangerously deeply. But Rosalie remembered sitting beside a lake 2 weeks before their wedding while Adrian discussed estate responsibilities, trade routes, political obligations, future expectations, everything practical, everything necessary. Then finally Rosalie asked quietly, and where exactly do I fit? Adrian looked confused. What? In your life? Silence. You speak about estates like they breathe. Another pause. You speak about responsibilities like they're people. She smiled softly. But you rarely speak about yourself. Adrian remembered answering honestly. I've never been particularly good at that. Rosalie reached for his hand then. Warm fingers. Gentle smile. Well, learn. At the time Adrian believed her completely. Unfortunately, only Rosalie kept trying afterward. Back in the present, Adrian watched her close another trunk. And suddenly panic moved sharply through his chest. Real panic. Because for the first time, Rosalie looked like someone emotionally finished. Not angry. Not wounded. Finished. Rosalie. His voice lowered. Don't leave like this. She paused, then looked at him quietly. How should I leave? Silence. Absolute silence. Because suddenly Adrian realized something horrifying. He expected her to stay. Even now. Even after everything. Some part of him still believed Rosalie would continue loving him through cruelty if he apologized eventually. And perhaps that had become the problem. Rosalie studied his face carefully. Then, you know what hurts most? Another pause. I defended you for years. Adrian frowned slightly. What? When people called you cold. Silence. When they said you cared more about work than people. Another. I defended you every time. Her eyes softened sadly. Then yesterday, I realized something awful. Adrian swallowed. What? I've been defending you to myself too. Silence filled the room completely. Because suddenly Adrian understood. Rosalie spent years translating his silences into love, excusing distance, explaining away neglect, convincing herself difficult love still counted as love. Until yesterday, until Clara, until hearing relief in his voice. And now she sounded exhausted. That evening Clara finally discovered what happened. Naturally, because disasters never remained secret inside large houses. Clara entered Adrian's study looking pale. Rosalie is leaving? Adrian stared at papers without reading them. Yes. Silence. Then quietly, "Because of me?" Adrian finally looked up. "No." Another pause. "This started long before you." Clara stood still near the doorway. Suddenly, none of her usual confidence remained. No bright smiles. No effortless charm. Just guilt. "I never meant to create problems." "I know." Silence stretched awkwardly. Then Clara looked down. "For what it's worth." Adrian waited. "She loves you terribly." Those words hurt unexpectedly. Because yes, Rosalie loved him terribly. Patiently. Faithfully. And somewhere along the way Adrian began treating that love like certainty instead of gift. Clara moved toward the door slowly. Then stopped. "You know why conversations with me feel easy?" Silence. "Because I never needed anything real from you." God. Lucien said the same thing. And suddenly Adrian realized everyone understood except him. Rosalie planned leaving at dawn. Mrs. Fenwick informed him quietly after midnight. No scene. No announcement. Just arrangements. Adrian stood outside their bedroom door for almost 10 minutes before finally entering. Rosalie sat beside candlelight writing something inside a small leather journal. She looked up immediately. Neither spoke at first. Then Adrian noticed something on the table beside her. Letters. Dozens of them, folded carefully with ribbons. "What are those?" Rosalie looked down. "Oh." A tiny smile touched her face. "Letters." Silence. "To who?" Another pause. "You." Adrian stared. "What?" Rosalie touched one gently. "I used to write when you traveled." His chest tightened instantly. "You never gave them to me." "No." She smiled sadly. "You were always tired when you returned." Another letter. "Or busy." Another. "Or distracted." Silence. "So eventually I stopped trying." "No. No." Because suddenly Adrian realized something devastating. Rosalie had been reaching toward him for years. In conversations. In walks. In letters never sent. And slowly, quietly, she gave up each time another closed door met her halfway. Adrian sat down across from her slowly. Hands unsteady. "May I read them?" Rosalie hesitated, then nodded once. Hours passed quietly afterward. The room remained silent except for crackling firelight and turning pages. Adrian read everything. Rosalie writing about missing him after storms. Rosalie describing gardens she wanted showing in. Rosalie noticing small, ridiculous things throughout her day and instinctively wanting sharing them. Then gradually, the letters changed. Lonelier. Quieter. One read, "I think marriage becomes dangerous when one person keeps reaching and the other stops noticing." Another, "Today you kissed my forehead while reading reports and never realized you called me Clara afterward." Adrian stopped breathing. "What?" Rosalie looked away immediately. "You were exhausted." "No." God. Because she remembered. She remembered and never even used it against him. Another letter. "Sometimes I feel like your life happens in another room and I only visit briefly." Another. "I miss being looked at like I matter instead of being looked through." By the final letter Adrian could barely see properly. Because suddenly the entire marriage unfolded differently. Not cold. Not loveless. Worse. Rosalie loved him continuously while slowly disappearing beside him. And Adrian simply failed to notice. Dawn arrived pale and quiet beyond frosted windows. Rosalie closed the final trunk. Then stood. "Well." Adrian looked up immediately. "No. No." Because she was still leaving. Even now. After everything. "Rosalie." She waited quietly. And finally, Adrian stopped defending himself. Stopped explaining. Stopped hiding behind exhaustion and responsibility and intention. "I think I loved being loved by you." Silence. But somewhere along the way, his voice broke slightly. "I stopped loving you actively." Rosalie stared. Because for the first time, he was telling the complete truth. Not polished truth. Not careful truth. Real truth. "I assumed you'd stay because you always had." Another breath. "And I treated your patience like something endless." The room remained completely still. Adrian looked toward the letters. Then back at her. "You spent years reaching for me." A pause. "I think I've spent years standing still expecting you to cross the distance alone." Rosalie's eyes filled slightly then. Only slightly. And somehow those almost tears hurt more than crying would have. Then Adrian stood slowly. Walked toward her carefully. No more comparisons. His voice lowered. "No more making you compete with easier versions of love." Another step. "No more expecting your understanding while giving you loneliness in return." Silence stretched. Long. Fragile. Then Rosalie asked the only question that mattered. What changes? Not are you love me. Not are you sorry. Reality. Adrian answered immediately. I do. A pause. I stop loving you passively. Another. And if you stay? His eyes met hers fully. You never reach alone again. Silence. Long silence. Then finally, very slowly, Rosalie looked toward the packed trunks. Then back at him, and quietly, almost too quietly to hear, she said, Tell the footmen to unpack.